Jimmy Stein's world-famous roster countdown is going to continue today, and one of the guys may have been one of the key sparks to last season's turnaround.
You are Locked On Bama, your daily podcast on the Alabama Crimson Tide, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Everybody, and welcome back into Locked On Bama. Luke Robinson, that's me. Jimmy Stein, that's him. And thank you for making this your first listen every single day. And yes, I'm wearing the same shirt as I wore yesterday because I'm doing this one late in the evening. So, because I'm hanging out in Lake City until I do a show tonight. So don't get mad at me. And yes, it might stink. I'm not even denying it. So, Jimmy, we've got to the point in the countdown where, as you mentioned, Connor Talty is sort of the line of demarcation.
There is one.
It is the.
There will be others.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good way to say, all right, there's what like BC, AD, and BC, and now there's like, Connor Talty, before Connor Talty and after Connor Talty when it comes to your countdown. And on your countdown today is one Jalen Hale.
Yeah.
Lord have mercy, Alabama fans love him a Jalen. And we love all Jalen's. Any Jalen can come to the University of Alabama. Bad Jalen's. You know what? That's not a bad idea. Name your child Jalen. You can't go wrong.
Jalen Moody was pretty good. He wasn't awesome. He was pretty good.
He got a scholarship at the University of Alabama.
That's that is good. Even Jayla Torrance on the softball team's pretty good.
But I mean, like Jalen is such a good name now. Like you have to really screw it up to not be a good Jalen. You know.
And Jalen Hale is our third Jalen from Texas. Yeah. Jalen Hurts, Jalen Milroe, and Jalen Hale, all from Texas. That there must be you must not be able to swing a dead steer in Texas and not hit a guy named Jalen.
And you know what? All the dudes that you mentioned named Jalen can probably pick up a dead steer.
And if you can swing a steer, if you can swing a steer, call Jalen DeBoer and ask about available scholarship opportunities.
You know, Jalen Hale made the catch. The catch would have been the thing if it weren't for Jalen Milroe getting blasted in the midsection, letting go of the pass against Ole Miss. The catch was unreal, and it sort of sparked Alabama to turn their season around. And, you know, there'll be some people that are still like national championship bust, like, well, the season didn't really turn around. We didn't win it all. We won the SEC. We beat Georgia. We beat our arch rivals. We did a lot of good things. And that particular play, to me, sort of set it off. That's what made it all happen. I think it gave everybody some belief. But you do feel bad for Jalen Hale in a sense that catch, I mean, outside of Bond's catch against Auburn, that probably was the catch of the year for Alabama. And it's completely overshadowed by the fact that Jalen Milroe took one right to the gut. And then he laid on the ground. You remember he laid on the ground. Everybody was like, oh, my God. Just as soon as we all had belief, you know, now he's hurt. We all assumed his knee was hurt. I know I did. I was there. And I was thinking, hey, that's it for him and us and everybody. It's all over. Meteor might as well hit. And then he got up. And do you remember how pumped up he was?
It was just like the scene in Jerry Maguire. It reminded me of the scene in Jerry Maguire.
That's so true.
Yeah,
I wish I had the ability to put that video on this, but I don't.
We'd be sued by so many people. It'd be so embarrassing to be sued by Cuba Gooding Jr.
We'd probably be sued by a couple of Jalen's. But anyway.
And then there's that. But we have Hale, unfortunately. Now the real sad news, other than we didn't put up the video, so we're not getting sued, much to the chagrin of the listeners. The real sad news is Jalen Hale is down here at 68 when otherwise he would be in the top 25 or so. I don't know where he would be if he was healthy, but it wouldn't be down here. He's 68 because even per Kalen DeBoer, Jalen Hale, if he gets healthy this year, it would probably be best case scenario very late in the year or even the postseason. So it sounds to me like he's got a redshirt year coming up here, a medical redshirt year, where he's just simply not healthy enough to play. And hey, best case, maybe, Luke, maybe he does get healthy for the postseason run when you need more depth. Who knows what will be happening at wide receiver over the course of so many games. Hale could get healthy down the stretch and be a key component. And if so, I've ranked him too low. But I've got him down here simply because I don't expect we will see him at all. And if we do see him, it would be very little. Then he's also got to rehab, come back from the injury, and be in playing shape. He just suffered a very serious leg injury. It's not a torn ACL. I'm not going to share no specifics to share with everyone because that's Jalen Hale's story to tell, not ours. But it's not a torn ACL. I mean, it's a significant injury, but long-term prognosis is very good. And the way I'm just choosing to look at it, Luke, is, hey, it's just a redshirt year. He didn't redshirt last year because he played too much not to redshirt. It's almost like, okay, last year was his redshirt year, and this year he's playing in about 5 or 6 games and catching about 6 balls. You know, if you got it reversed, everything just looks kind of normal. But no, I think his redshirt year is going to come this year in year 2. And then he'll be a redshirt sophomore in the fall of 2025 and completely healthy and probably one of the best wide receivers on the team. This kid has a ton of talent. I think he's a great fit in the new offense, Luke, because up at Washington, they had bigger receivers. And Jalen Hale's not huge, but he's bigger than your standard SEC receiver. Plays with a lot of physicality. He's got great hands. Think about it. He's got great hands. That play against Ole Miss demonstrates it. And I agree with Luke. Kind of hard to say, hey, the whole season turned around because of one play. Not saying that, but if you do boil it down to one play, I would agree it's that one.
You know, and here's the thing. If we had gone on to lose that game, then obviously nobody would have said that. Even if we had gone on to lose that game and do what we did, which we wouldn't have made the playoffs if we lose that game. But, I mean, when you think about a season and you think about a championship season at least, you always have to go back to what's the impetus of this thing. And I really believe that was it because it also was right after the South Florida debacle. And remember, there was still talk like, oh, my God. I mean, Alabama doesn't even have a quarterback. Who are they going to start against Ole Miss now? You know, and everybody was still kind of wondering if Jalen Milroe took the benching okay. You know what I mean? Because, yeah, I know in the game against South Florida, he was being very supportive and all that. But there probably were fans that were wondering, I mean, probably us. If I want to go back and watch those podcasts, I encourage you to. I'm not. I don't like the way I looked skinnier back a year ago. But I think that some people are probably like, we don't know how Jalen Milroe is going to handle what's happened, you know. So anyway, I just found it a little interesting that I think that that's where the whole kickoff for last year, no pun intended, happened. So, Jimmy, we're going to talk a little news when we come back, and we're also going to talk about a new addition through the transfer portal. Right now, I'm going to tell you about FanDuel, though. You know I am. And I know you already know these things that I'm telling you because you're smart. You've already probably signed up for FanDuel. But on the offshoot that you haven't, look, it's winner take all time in the NBA and NHL. And FanDuel's giving you a shot to bring home a big win of your own. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 to bet on spreads or money lines or player props or team props, whatever you want, much, 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 much more. I got to tell you, Jimmy, every time I try to say much, much more, I end up saying like several more muches. It's just weird. I can't stop
the point. I think if you say much more than once, it emphasizes the point because much, really what you're doing is much, right?
It's a lot. It's almost too much. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make every playoff shot count because America is pretty smart and FanDuel is America's number one sportsbook.
Number one.
I keep transposing America and FanDuel on that, and I almost keep saying America is
FanDuel's
America is FanDuel's number one sports book, and it's the other way around. So that's fine. I don't know why. That's just
American. What's because American FanDuel go so well together?
Good point. Couple of news items of the day before we get into your number 67 player. Number one, Alabama and Purdue have solidified their home and home for basketball. We all knew this was coming, but now it's officially official. Except I don't think we still know the dates, which is fine. But we know it's going to be in West Lafayette and then in Tuscaloosa. I think that's awesome. What a huge shout out. Listen, I mean, John Mechie, man, maybe John Mechie's sort of like Jalen Hale. I mean, he's so underappreciated by us. I mean, we should love him so much more. John Mechie won the George Halas Award, presented by the NFL. And I mean, he just unbelievable. It's presented annually to an NFL player or coach or staff member who overcomes the most adversity to succeed. I mean, just love me some John Mechie. And boy, I really hope eventually, I do. You know, I want him to carve his own path and do all that stuff, whatever. But I hope somehow, some way, his path ends up back at Alabama coaching in some way, because I would love to have him down here. I mean, somebody who's from New Jersey that could really sell the program. And, you know, we're up there recruiting some New Jersey wide receivers right now. And so it couldn't hurt. And then finally, want to give a shout out. Speaking of the South Florida game last year, Ty Buckner went in, and I mean, frankly, he was awful. And he transfers to Notre Dame after this year. He sticks it out for the year, transfers to Notre Dame. You know what he does? He goes and wins the National Lacrosse Championship. I mean, man,
awesome.
Great story. That's America to me. Like, it didn't work out for something. You're a great athlete. It didn't work out for something. Like, it just never really got, you know, going for you in football. You had all the opportunity. You had the opportunity, and you missed it. And then you picked yourself back up by the cleats, straps, and you went over to Notre Dame and you won yourself a national championship. I mean, it's not the same as winning a college football championship, but it's a big deal.
He won an SEC championship. He won an SEC championship in football and a national championship in lacrosse in the same school year and at two different places. I mean, that's wild. I'm sure it's never been done before, so that's cool. You do something in college sports that's never been done before.
That is,
I think it's cool. And on top of all of it, and all that really should matter to anyone is he's a great kid. I never heard one negative, and he could have really pitched a fit about everything. But I never heard anything but highly positive things to say about Tyler Buckner as a person. He's also crazy smart, and he's going to be a tremendous success no matter what he does. He's one of these super smart. Check out the big brain on Brett type guys.
Well, I love, you know, what a cool thing to have too. You know what it'd be like winning a water skiing national championship or something, like, because if you win a college football championship in college football, like, there are always going to be women after you and guys,
of course,
you know, some guys after you and people trying to get your autograph or whatever. But, you know, what an icebreaker. If you're just out at does people still go to singles bar? You're at the singles bar and you're hanging out and there are a bunch of good looking women in there. And you start sort of hitting it off with one of them, and they're like, "Hey, what's that ring for?" And you're like, I won a national championship in lacrosse." And she's like, "Lacrosse, that's awesome, because, you know, if you were a college football national championship winner, then I'd feel like, there are probably too many women chasing you already. But lacrosse is just perfect."
She's not going to say. You sure she's not going to say? Is lacrosse French for the cross?
Lacrosse means I'm
how cool is
world's greatest sex instructor. First lesson free.
That's what they say. That's why they closed the singles bars. That's why they had to close them all, because of that line right there.
My uncle had a hat. My parents used to have, and with my uncle had a condo in Destin when I was really young. I'll never forget. There was a hat that was like in their closet, and it was my uncle's hat. It just said sex instructor, first lesson free. And I was like, what? Yeah, even at like age 6, I was like, you have to be the cockiest SOB on the planet to wear that.
This is why they don't have singles.
But if it works just once, it was worth it.
That's why all the singles bars just moved to Facebook.
That is so true. All right, we got to get to your number 67 player, Jimmy, and that is
Nyquil Bertrand. which is, let's start first about the name because it's mispronounced a lot. It's probably been mispronounced by me 1,000 times and Luke on the show, because who the heck knows until they get here and you get to ask and you find out. But actually his name is actually pronounced. I've been saying NyQuil. It's actually NyQuil, just like the medicine, NyQuil. And his last name only has one R in it, not two. I say Bertrand a lot. I don't know where I got that other R from, but his name is NyQuil Bertrand, and we should know this.
When I was typing up the write-up for this, like sometimes I type up our write-up before we get started so I can easily post everything. I put in Bertrand. I was like, I'm not sure that it's NyQuil or Bertrand. Jimmy, then I was like, I looked to see what you wrote, and I was like, Jimmy usually checks things like this. So I checked it, and I was like, I had to take the R out myself. It's like you just want to put an R in there for some reason.
And I did from day one. I mean, that's one of the reasons I'm going over it so much is because I think I butchered this going back from his transfer from A&M to Alabama back in January. But anyway, NyQuil Bertrand, we have him down here at 67. He is a backup left tackle on the football team. Backup, he will be probably the number 2 left tackle. Now, let's say the starting left tackle, who's going to be Caden Proctor, almost certainly. If Proctor goes down, is Bertrand going to then become the starting left tackle? Probably not. So I'm saying he's a second-team left tackle, but they sort of do the substitutions. The way I like to think of it, sort of a pecking order. And really at tackle, it's Proctor at 1 and Pritchett at 2 and Formby at 3 and Bertrand probably at 4. Maybe Casey Poe could be in there. But anyway, when Alabama took NyQuil, keep this in mind. When Alabama took NyQuil, that's a funny thing to say. When Alabama took NyQuil from Texas A&M, it was never with the idea, even though it's a transfer portal kid, that this is going to be an immediate starter or someone that can, hey, we're losing Proctor, maybe this kid can start. Bertrand was taken from the very jump with the idea of this is a developmental prospect. This is a high upside, meaning this kid can be really good, but he's going to need some work, which is very common. I say all the time for people like, well, why would you take a guy like that? Well, let me name another guy that's like that. DJ Fluker was like that. And Bertrand is a big kid like Fluke. Jaden Roberts was a guy like that. It took a while, and then he arrived. So Bertrand is going to be more like that, kind of a late arriver, late bloomer. He's still developing. That's why I got him way down here at 67. I'm not expecting him to play a significant role this fall, not even if Proctor gets hurt. My guess is they would move the number 2 right tackle, whoever that ends up being. Formby or Pritchett would probably become the next left tackle, and really would be Pritchett because he's had some experience there at the left side. So Bertrand's going to be second in terms of how you'd write out a depth chart, but probably not the second left tackle in reality. Still needs some time in the incubator, but the promise is there. Just don't count on it soon. Let's see what we have in him next spring. I think let's see, maybe next spring might be an opportunity for him to make a charge up the ladder. But again, high upside, good athlete, raw. Played in Philadelphia, didn't have a lot of offers out of high school, but A&M, A&M's got a pretty good track record, even under Jimbo with offensive linemen, by the way.
Let's also be sure everybody's aware it's Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, not Philadelphia, Mississippi. When you're around these parts, Jimmy, and you say Philadelphia, only because they had a casino, and yours truly, they still have a casino, but yours truly, when Philadelphia, Mississippi opened, it saved me a lot of gas because I would drive in the middle of the night to Vicksburg, Mississippi.
Oh, wow.
Several occasions when I was in Alabama.
Philadelphia, much closer and cool. Yeah, Mississippi's got some big city name for some small schools. I never forget a basketball coach saying he was driving through the countryside, turned on AM radio, and it was Philadelphia versus Houston. He's like, oh, thank goodness I found an NBA game on the radio. But it's Philadelphia High School versus Houston High School.
When we come back, it's time to talk about some more visitors this weekend. It's going to be a big one, y'all. So, Jimmy, we've been talking, normally about this time we'd be putting your countdown would take up all 3 segments. But because this weekend has been so big, we did the last segment on the last podcast about these visitors, and we're going to take up this segment for visitors. So tell us about some more visitors coming in.
Yeah, let's talk today. We talked in yesterday's show, the one you heard yesterday, we talked about the 3 kids who are committed to Alabama that are officially visiting this weekend. Today, we're going to talk about 3 more, and this is what they have in common. They all attend Mater Dei High School in Santa Ana, California, wherever Mater Dei is, one of those suburbs of L.A. Man, we have really developed quite the pipeline out of Mater Dei, right? You had Bryce Young, that helped create things. Xavier Brown's on the team now, Damani Jackson. So there's already 3 players on the team right now from what is truly probably the powerhouse program, not only of California, but of the Western United States. I mean, that's how big a deal Mater Dei is, and they annually produce a ton of prospects. And here comes 3 more. These guys were, again, have the Alabama pipeline connection. They were also all being recruited by Washington, DeBoer and Courtney Morgan out at Washington before they got here. So these kids at Mater Dei, they knew DeBoer, they knew these Washington coaches, they knew Courtney Morgan. You add it all up, and they're very interested in Alabama. Not here to predict that any of the 3 are coming to Alabama, but I can say that you better not rule out any of these 3 going to Alabama. It is very realistic that any of the 3 could end up there. One is Chuck McDonald. He is a cornerback, just like Damani, just like Xavier Brown. So he's got older buddies that are corners at Alabama. You can't, and Chuck McDonald is a national top 100 prospect. So that's a pretty big deal, right? Another national top 100 guy, just like Xavier Brown, just like Damani Jackson. Can't rule out Chuck McDonald picking Alabama. And again, on 3 ranks Chuck McDonald. He's in the industry ranking as a top 100 player nationally. Second guy, also super excited about. By the way, Chuck McDonald's a national top 10 corner. Jordan Davison, the running back from Mater Dei, down pretty much to Alabama and Ohio State. By the way, Chuck McDonald's sort of Alabama USC maybe right now. Jordan Davison might be Alabama Ohio State, even though he's from California. This is, in my opinion, based on the tape I've seen so far, maybe the best back in the country in his class. I think on 3 right now, he's a universal top 5 back, I think, in everyone's rankings. Great players from Mater Dei all the time. Jordan Davison's just another one that rolls off the assembly line there. Very realistic he could end up at Alabama. Do have to battle Ohio State, who does a good job recruiting that position. And finally, also from Mater Dei, officially visiting this weekend, Marcus Harris, a wide receiver. He's not ranked quite as high as the other 2 guys, more of a national top 250. So he's a 4-star, but kind of national top 250. But he's a guy who, hey, he could rise in the rankings this summer. Alabama likes him a lot. They're recruiting him at Washington. This staff knows receivers. Between Jamarcus Shepard, who's an outstanding wide receiver coach, and Kalen DeBoer himself, who was a college wide receiver. Look what they did at Washington a year ago with Adunze, with Polk and McMillan all going in the first 3 rounds. This staff knows receivers, and they like Marcus Harris a ton. We'll see what happens with him. He could end up almost anywhere. I think Oregon is heavily involved there, maybe USC. Again, not predicting a BOL. We're not predicting at this point. No solid predictions yet, but Alabama very much in the mix. And they'll all 3 be officially visiting Tuscaloosa and Alabama this weekend. And Andrew Bone doing great work putting these lists together at BOL. So be sure to follow Bone and join BOL.
Yeah, Jordan Davison was just named the 18th best player in the country and a 5-star by Rivals. Now, that's the good news. The bad news is, frankly, I trust Rivals rankings the least of all the major services. I mean, I really do. I feel like I trust On3s the most, not just because you're there. I feel like they put the work in, and I feel the most comfortable, at least with their Alabama guys, like Bone and Watts, et cetera. And then I would say I really do, even though I think ESPNs are a little bit weird sometimes. I trust ESPNs and 24/7s more than I trust Rivals. So
that's why on 3 we have that industry composite, the industry rating, which is where we're interested in how the other services are ranking players, and that's why we come up with the industry where we think, hey, this is a best way to look at all of it put together. But it is notable, and Luke basically just mentioned this, in the On3 formula, we weight On3's opinion and 24/7's opinion higher than Rivals and ESPN in the formula that they use, because they just believe it's the most accurate way to do it.
And you know what? I think that's the best way to do it, honestly, because it just feels like I don't have any empirical data to back this up. I'm just saying it feels right. And you know it when you see it. So that's the way I believe on that. Well, tomorrow, Jimmy, we will continue your countdown because it's so much fun. We're going to be at number 66, 65, and maybe 64. We just got to wait and see. But I got a sneak peek at some of them. I'm not going to say the names because I'm sworn to secrecy. But there are some there's some names that you people will be familiar with and you'll be anxious to hear. And I think even some of y'all may be a little taken aback at where some of these dudes are, and you will think they should have been higher. But my thing to that is, hey, actually that should make you feel good that these guys who, if you were just saying off the top of your head, you know, this one particular guy, for instance, that I'm thinking of, I would be willing to bet most people say, yeah, I'd put him at number 42, 43, and you're going to have him around 62. Okay, I think that bodes well for the roster.
It does. And hey, there's nothing that's going to engender more disagreements than ranking 87 players, right? I mean, no one is going to see it the exact same way for 87 guys. I just want people to focus on the roster ranking is about this fall. It's not about how good players are, what kind of careers they will ultimately have. It's about this fall. So obviously, the guys that I'm expecting to see play significant roles this fall will rank higher than, let's say, for instance, a redshirt guy. Like we've already talked about Casey Poe, for instance, a few days ago. I think Casey Poe could have I compare him to Landon Dickerson. I mean, I think Casey Poe could have a Landon Dickerson type career, both at Alabama and then even in the NFL. But I don't think we're going to see much of Casey Poe this fall. I think he's going to redshirt. We won't see much of him. So he's lower in the rankings. If I did a ranking of, hey, these are the 87 most talented guys, you know, boy, that would be very, very difficult to do. But the rankings will look differently.
All right, that's going to do it for today's pod. We'll be back tomorrow with more. Until then, roll tide, everybody.
Roll tide.